season. There's the list of most guaranteed money by a kicker, and Aubrey now eclipses Harrison Butker for that title. I'm Tommy Tran with Jonathan Jones. JJ, what more can you tell us about the Cowboys and Brandon Aubrey today?
So the Cowboys had slapped a tender on Brandon Aubrey. They sort of dared anybody, come try to sign him to some offer sheet if you want and send a second-round pick. Brandon Aubrey is worth a second-round pick, certainly worth that in the 2026 draft, even though he is a kicker, because he is a game changer, because the Dallas Cowboys, if they get a touchback and get a first down and a couple more yards, they are in scoring position. They can get 3 points with the leg of Brandon Aubrey. And so they hammer out this deal with Todd France, the agent of Brandon Aubrey, who happens to be the same agent as Dak Prescott. He helped make Dak Prescott the highest paid player and quarterback in NFL history. He now helps Brandon Aubrey become the highest paid kicker in NFL history, $7 million per year on average. He's locked up there in Dallas, and it's a great move, an obvious move for the Cowboys. This is what they've wanted, and in this new age NFL with the new dynamic kickoff, you need a guy like Brandon Aubrey.
I think you hinted at it, but one more before I let you go in terms of just the sense of what we're talking about, right? Because at one point, Aubrey wanted $10 million a season. There was a deadline last week that if he didn't get it done, 5.6 was floated out there, so this seems to be something in the middle. Did you get a sense that anything was going to even be close to that $10 million from any other team in the league?
No, not 10 million. That wasn't happening. I'm not entirely sure that that's what the agent was pushing for, but in terms of being the highest paid, he could have been the highest paid at $6.5 million and won, right? So they wanted to go up. Was it going to be 8? Was it going to be 9? Obviously, they settled at 7, something that unless there is a huge season that we are not anticipating from a kicker this upcoming regular season, Brandon Aubrey is not only the highest paid kicker in NFL history today, but probably a year from now as well.
Our thanks to JJ with the breaking news on Brandon Aubrey and the Dallas Cowboys.
For Cincy, but where are you on how this all played out?
Does it really feel like a win for Cincy? I mean, look, I get it. I know why they're doing it. The regime is in trouble. First and foremost, they got to win. Joe Burrow is not happy. If they don't make moves to try and win games, he's probably going to want to go somewhere else. So you understand the move. And would they have got an impact player at 10 like Dexter Lawrence? Probably not. But talk to me in about 3 years and see how this works out for you.
Not even probably not. No is the answer, right?
Well, I mean, Dexter Lawrence a year ago wasn't great.
Hey, defend the defensive line, Lee J.
Yeah, well, to me, this makes so much sense because of what Pete just talked about. You're trying to maximize Joe Shiesty in this offense that's been explosive, one of the more explosive offenses over the last 3 or 4 years, and they've been abysmal on defense. And I know people will say, to his standard, Dexter Lawrence didn't play up to what we're accustomed to seeing him play. But I talked to interior offensive linemen in football, and he's still one of the most feared guys in football. A lot of what he does, Pete, doesn't show up in the scorecard, right, or the scorebook, because you have to put at least 2 guys on him every single play. And sometimes 3 guys. You turn on some of the tape, he gets most of the attention on that defensive line. I think Brian Burns will tell you firsthand that his ascension this last year has a lot to do with what Dexter Lawrence does in the middle of the defense. So if you're the Cincinnati Bengals and you've been abysmal, stopping the run, letting the ball get over your head, Dexter Lawrence helps you from day one. And to Ryan's point, at pick number 10, you're not going to find a player that is going to have the impact that Dexter Lawrence is going to have over the next 2 to 3 years.
Considering he was found at pick number 17, you can say that. Where was Jeffrey Simmons picked? At pick number 20, I think?
He had ACL.
But the bottom line is...
Is there anybody that has the makeup of Dexter Lawrence in this draft? Yes or no?
No.
No, so you're not going to find a player like Dexter Lawrence.
But here's the other thing. Carl Banks, who, look, he calls the games.
Love Carl.
He calls the games for the Giants. Carl Banks is one of the great players ever in the history of this league. He called him out last year for not being a factor on that team. And Carl Banks, to do that when you're an employee of the Giants, that tells you what they thought about Dexter Lawrence.
But it also shows you how people feel about how good Dexter Lawrence is, because they felt like he wasn't playing to his standard.
He wasn't.
I'll tell you this. Just knowing Dex personally and knowing that this has nothing to do with that. That has nothing to do with it.
Okay.
I know he's highly motivated to prove a lot of people wrong. And then also, he's going to a team where one of his close friends, B.J. Hill, is. And I talked to B.J. Hill. He was excited about this move. You know, they couldn't stop anybody against the run.
The Giants didn't stop the run last year either.
All
I'm
right,
telling you,
here's
this
the
is a
thing.
massive
You know
deal.
who else is highly motivated? Our Jonathan Jones, our CBS Sports NFL insider. And I think JJ has some news on what's going on with Sexy Dexy and what this all means for the Giants and, of course, the Cincinnati Bengals there as you look at the current updated top 10 where the Giants are now picking 5 and 10. All right, here we go, JJ. What do you got? Love the see-through specs looking like Jackson Dart there. So is this a Cincy thing or is this a New York Giants thing?
Well, first of all, Ryan, it's great to see you. Ran, it's great to hear from you so far in this show. Lee J and Pete doing what you guys always do. Here's what I can tell you about the trade that took place with the Cincinnati Bengals, right? Yeah, the 10th pick in this draft, it's rich, right? But if we all agree that this is a lesser draft, then the 10th pick is not as valuable as typical drafts. And you also consider that the Cincinnati Bengals have not drafted all that well, right? We can go back to the Shamar Stewart case and all that stuff. They have not drafted well. So if you say, wow, 10th is rich, well, do you trust this team to make the right pick at 10, especially if you think this is like an 8 or so player first round, okay? They could have been frozen out of that. Dexter Lawrence, I think to Lijay's point, if he returns to 2024 Dex and not 2025 Dexter Lawrence, if you get that version of Dexter Lawrence, you're going to get somebody who's going to help out Shamar Stewart and Myles Murphy on the edges, who is going to help out the guys behind him. And yes, they still need some stuff there on the Cincinnati defense. Lou Anarumo, who got fired by Cincinnati, I would have to think probably wasn't all that upset about leaving Cincinnati to go to the Indianapolis Colts. Meanwhile, the New York Giants, they understood that Dexter Lawrence wanted out. This was not necessarily about money because it's just a one-year, $28 million extension, right? The Giants could have done that. But instead, what they get here is another top 10 pick to help remake this team in the vision of John Harbaugh. And we know that he is calling the shots here. And so in the top 10, would I at all be surprised to see them go offense and defense or defense at 5 and 10? None whatsoever.
Yeah, I'll just throw in my little 2 cents. I know y'all got good credit. Y'all don't need any
Hey, reintroduce
cosigners.
yourself again.
Hi, everybody. My name is Rand Farton. I'm a part of this podcast. Thank you guys for joining us today. But no, here's the one thing I want to say, and this is more of a Cincinnati Bengals thing and not an indictment on Sexy Dexy or whatever, but are you a Dexter Lawrence away from making this a top-tier defense? Right, you add Dex, and you can put as many hands as you want on Dex in the middle. But how are you going to get to the quarterback? You still have tons of questions about who your edge guys, and we can say Shamar Stewart, we can say Myles Murphy, but we have not seen them do it. And so again, my thing is, was this more of a let's show everyone we're trying to do something to fix this versus knowing that, okay, we're making this one fix and it's going to take our team to the next level?
I'll say this. They also brought in Boye Mafe from Seattle and then Brian Cook in the secondary. So they've tried to revamp. And to JJ's point, I'm so glad he brought that up. That's why I think that number 10 overall pick wasn't as vast as people think it is because they've struggled developing guys. We talked about Myles Murphy. He sort of started to turn the corner towards the end of last year, but Shamar Stewart hasn't really showed up. Chris Jenkins, another D tackle, hasn't showed up. So to me, why not get a proven guy? You add a Jonathan Allen, who had some struggles last year, but is a veteran player as well. You have B.J. Hill, you have T.J. Slayton. Pete, this is the first time they've actually had a good rotation of veteran guys at D tackle. When's the last time we could say that about the Bengals? And then you get Boye Mafe, Myles Murphy. Now you're not expecting Shamar Stewart to be the guy right now. He's going to be defensive end 3 or 4, and they fixed their safety with a guy that has championship pedigree in Brian Cook. So they've made some moves.
Real quick, Pete, before you go, I think, and to your point, I'm not refuting anything you're saying.
Yeah.
But I think what you just said shows that there's a larger issue in Cincinnati.
Oh, development issue for
Because
sure.
if there's a development issue, then, I mean, every year, I mean, are you going to adopt a let's need F those picks and you're just going to trade them for first round for known guys? You know, but that to me, that just adds even more questions than answers.
Here's what you have to ask yourself when it comes to this trade. If the Bengals coaching staff and front office weren't on notice, and Joe Burrow was happy in Cincinnati, do they make that move?
But sometimes
That's a lot of ifs, though.
But that's why you're making a move based on something that you're kind of panicking a little bit.
But sometimes isn't that what you need, a kick in the pants to get your mind right and when you understand your job isn't going to be there no matter what, that, okay, let's make this. We see this all the time when the season is done for these teams in week 15, and they just start playing guys they should have been playing before.
Well, here's the other part of the equation that we're not entering in there. If you draft in that spot, that money for that player is a lot less than what you're going to be paying this guy in terms of.
And so is the production, though.
There's like a $10 million difference, so you got to kind of add that to his salary too.
Well, let me ask you this about the Bengals in particular.
Cap, though. They're fine.
But I get it, but you still, you got to look to the future. We're just discounting draft picks now. Okay,
This is an all-in move, though, Pete. This is literally an
all-in for
all-in move to try to get back to the Super Bowl for them.
Dexter Lawrence is 28. He'll be 29 during the season, so he's not 100 years old.
30-year-old is defensive lineman going off the cliff.
But let me ask you this, and I mentioned it at the top. What is a better choice at 10 than Dexter Lawrence if you're the Bengals to make this team better?
What year? We're not talking about just right now. We're talking
for
about
2 years from now. I would even say this
about the organization.
From 2 to 3 years from now.
Young players. That's how you build your team. Cheap, young players.
Let me ask you this, Rand. If you draft cheap young players and your defense has been as bad as it's been for the Bengals for the last 4, 5, 6 years, is changing it up and getting a proven player like Dexter Lawrence a terrible idea?
It's not a terrible idea, but at the same time, you turn around and you pay him whatever the new average is going to be on that contract. Here's how you know. Just go back to just the history of time in building teams. They've spent heavy on the offensive side of the football. And there will be room on the defensive side to pay one guy here, one guy there, but you can't pay everybody. So that's where you're going to have young talent. And the way to get young talent is through draft choices. But like everyone keeps saying, there's a developmental issue here. And so, again, it leads to larger things. So I'm all on board with if you don't win it this year, then something will probably be done to move on, because you got to get people in there that can develop young talent and allow you to balance out your books and building the team.
All right, let's go back to the other smart guy with glasses, Jonathan Jones.
Look, I think this does go back to the fact that this is an organization that has been below average at drafting, right? If they didn't make this move at 10 on Thursday night, all I was going to hear Pete Prisco was give them a D for how terrible they just drafted at number 10 overall, right? When you consider what they have done the last couple of years, they let Jesse Bates walk. They try to bring in Dax Hill. That didn't work, right? Miles Murphy, Lige just talked about it, starting to turn the corner, but we really got to see a little bit more out of him. Remember, they took Jermaine Burton in the 3rd round. He's not even on the team anymore, right? Shamar Stewart in that ridiculous contract dispute that took place, and he hasn't shown up at all. Chris Jenkins, the list goes on, and Pete is correct that this is not, can you get Dexter Lawrence or a Dexter Lawrence-like player at 10th overall? It's not just that, because at 10th overall, you're paying that player a whole lot less than you are Dexter Lawrence. But while it is a 1-year, $28 million extension, it is effectively a 3-year, $70 million contract. We still haven't seen how this deal is ultimately structured, but essentially you can get 2 years out of Dexter Lawrence. Let's call it the end of his prime, right? If he goes back to 2023, 2024, Dexter Lawrence, that's an all-pro player. You get that for 2 years. You can cut bait in that final year. And was it ultimately what you would have done at 10 overall? I think there's a pretty decent argument with that. This organization, a good Dexter Lawrence for 2.5 years is better than who they would have taken at number 10.
All right, good start. Good talk. Let's take a quick break here. We come back. We're going to look at JJ's one and only mock draft, the Insider Edition. We'll look at that top 10 right after this break.